So guys, I appreciate everyone that gave me a hand here with technical difficulties. Apparently, I don't have the start broadcasting button. I don't know if it's a Chrome issue, whatever it is, but technology. Let's get started because I only have 15 minutes now and I have to get through all of this content. Guys, I'm going to fly through this. Please use the Q&A. I'll try to hit every single note that I can. But my name's Eric. For those who don't know, I am going to skip through all of this, but I use my hashtag Salesforce responsibly. Please do feel free to follow it. There's a lot of cool content there. But today's agenda, with the time that we have, I am going to go here and once and for all talk about what is a lead. Because the definition, although simple, can be very wrong several times. I want to talk about who should use leads in your organization. I'm going to talk about who should not use leads in your organization, and if your company should even use leads to begin with. The takeaways, I'll summarize that at the end. I will just continue to go right through this. By the way, there's 3% chance I made up this statistic. But for the most part, I want to do a little bit of talking and get back to the agenda. So coming back to it really quick, what is a Salesforce lead? So most people, if you look online, will actually say that, and I took off the screen sharing, most people online will actually say that a lead is where you put your prospects in. And by definition, that can be insanely misleading, guys. So I actually worked with a company once that had their salespeople using leads, and they were complaining about leads being cumbersome. So one of the challenges when we came in and, through our consulting, we started working with them and trying to understand what was going wrong. And I saw that salespeople were opening leads to make their phone calls. And as soon as they're on the call, they switch immediately to the notebook and start taking all of their notes down. And it was even crazy because in this one example, one guy was about to get the sale and he started taking credit card information down and all of these things down on these notebooks. And it just blew my mind away when we started going into like realizing that here's a company that all salespeople have notebooks in their desks and this is how they've learned to manage it. But if you look at it, that person that purchased was a prospect. So by definition, something was right. But the reality of it is that for that prospect to work, you'd had to convert the lead, create the opportunity, go to the opportunity, add the opportunity products, then come back to the opportunity, add the payment methods, and it was just chaotic. So you can see that even though it fits the definition of leads is where you put your prospects, it doesn't work that way. And there's one key word that if you guys get away with, if you guys take away from this meeting, is that leads is where you put your unknown prospects. And if you think about it from that perspective, everything suddenly starts to dramatically take a shift for the difference. Because if you're looking at it from a perspective of leads is where you have your unknown prospects, then the purpose of leads is simply to understand one simple question. Is this someone that I or my company wants to do business with? And that's one of the big things that you have to keep in mind as we're going through this is leads is there just for qualifying purposes. Not if they're interested in doing business with you, but if you are interested in doing business with them. If you can answer that question, however you do it internally in your company, then the lead is qualified and should be converted. Regardless of whether there's an opportunity, the lead's object served its purpose. So the big piece is, even if you have any questions, go to a standard Salesforce org out of the box. The last lead status is what? Qualified. Even Salesforce wants you to use leads to the point that you get to qualified, and that's it. Once you know you want to do business with it, it's a qualified lead, it gets converted into a prospect account. I'm going to share my screen again, and this is probably going to be the image that we're going to be stuck on for the remainder of this session. So, So essentially, we're talking a little bit about here, and we're talking about leads being your unknown information, right? Where you have those unknowns. A great example is a trade show list, right? You go into a trade show and you have your badge scanners and people scan 100, 200, 1,000, 5,000 scans, and you get that Excel spreadsheet of names. Now, I've been to trade shows in a past life. I've done quite a few of them myself, and I know that those trade show lists of people who scan are filled with people who are just unknowns, because when you load it in, you have to segment the people who are real prospects from the people who just scan their badges for some free pens, for some free gifts. People, maybe someone was looking for an internship at your company and they scanned their badge. So there's a lot of information there that would probably not be qualified people, because you don't know if you want to do business with them or not. So again, leads becomes that perfect object for you to be able to work that list and define and qualify those individuals, because that way, when you know you want to do business with them, you can convert them immediately, and that becomes a matter of a prospect account. So if you look at the bottom here, I say where in Salesforce, and leads is where you have that unknown information. Once that converts, you're talking about accounts where type equals prospect. And that's where the nurturing begins. You may not have a full, full knowledge of whether they're interested in you or not, but you know you want to do business with them. Whether it's tomorrow or a year from now, you want to do business with them, and those are prospect accounts. Now, from a question of introducing a couple of terms here, we have marketing qualified lead, the MQLs, and sales qualified lead. I'll go very briefly again in the essence of time, but Andrea says I can go over. I got a few extra minutes, guys. Feel free to stick around, ask questions, but I will continue to go through this. But in a timeline, right, we're looking at it here. We have leads, we have marketing qualified leads, which again is you saying, I know I want to do business with this individual. And a sales qualified lead is the individual saying, I want to consider doing business with you. So when that person shows interest to you, that's when you have an opportunity. When that person says, I'm interested, tell me more, and you have active conversations going on, that's when you are genuinely now in an opportunity, and that's when you have a sales qualified lead. And then obviously, hopefully you get to close the deal and you get to open some champagne bottles, and that becomes a customer account. But those are some of the big pieces, which comes to the second question I want to talk about today is who should be using opportunities. And if you're looking at the image instead of paying attention to me, you may already have answered that question, that leads should not be used by sales. So the people who should be really using leads in Salesforce are marketing and inside sales teams. There's only one possible scenario where a salesperson needs to go into leads, where if for whatever reason, someone who is a lead just calls in out of their own free will and gets connected straight to a salesperson, then that person could go into leads to pull that, or search in Salesforce, pull that lead and convert it into an account themselves. But no salesperson should ever be creating leads or anything like that, because again, that's the job of people who are leads is for people who are going to qualify and decide whether it meets the minimum criteria for it to be in a salesperson's radar. So that, if you go by that definition, once you know you want to convert your lead into a prospect account, you know you want to do business with them, you'll never run into the question of, crap, we converted this lead and now we want to bring it back because it wasn't, there was no opportunity or no deal. That's one of the big things that I always hear about, because people start struggling with, crap, I've converted, but I can't unconvert leads. Well, the reality of it is that you shouldn't have to, because once you know you want to do business with them, regardless of whether they're interested or not, you never have to worry about that point ever again, because unless you change your business entirely, that question or that fact is not going to change. So again, some of the things to consider. So the question, we're talking about also from a user adoption perspective, if you take away an extra tab that a sales user has to use, you eliminate the thought process of them of, oh, do I have to work in leads or do I have to work in contacts? How does this work? You're eliminating an extra tab for them to work on, which simplifies the salesperson's job so they can be focused on outreaches and trying to get the deals. So again, it simplifies a lot of the process by thinking that leads is where you put your unknown prospects. So the final question that I want to tackle in here is, and feel free to put your questions in, I'm happy to address them. But the final question that I want to tackle in is, should your organization use, actually, before I do that, before talking about that, I want to talk about Pardot in a second. So we're going to talk about, we are in ParDreamin, so we want to talk Pardot, and how does this all tie together to Pardot? Well, in Pardot, a prospect is a prospect, regardless if it's leads or contacts. So one of the things that you have to keep in mind, and we're talking about these marketing qualified leads, these three big stages between lead, MQL, and SQL, when you're considering these, Pardot actually is fairly well aligned with this, because if you look at it, you have what's called Pardot grade and Pardot score. Now, in the marketing qualified lead, or in Pardot, the Pardot grade is you being able to classify whether you want to do business with them. You're saying, hey, let's assign grades based on the criteria for these prospects that we have. So you see that it's very well aligned on that sense. The Pardot score, however, is an indicator of a sales qualified lead, because it starts telling you, hey, here are the interactions, right? He may not have done the final move, which is reach out to us or tell us, I'm interested, tell me more. But hey, he opened this email, he clicked on this link, he went to our website, he downloaded this PDF. So you're getting the Pardot score answers the question, are they interested in us, and how interested are they in us? The Pardot grade answers the question, are we interested in them? And all of that ties together. And I do have a very simple trick for those that are looking to implement MQL that I will explain shortly, and we'll try to get this covered in this video. And yes, I see people freaking out with sales should not be using leads. That is correct. I stand by the statement that sales should not be using leads. Do stand by that all day. Anywho, so that's how it all kind of ties together in Pardot, and we only have 25 minutes, so I will continue. But the final question is, should you be using leads in your organization? Now, I do ask two questions to companies usually to filter that out and answer that, which is, first, do you have one person that is dedicated to sales, or I'm not dedicated to inside sales, or dedicated to marketing, right? So if you have a user that has to be doing half and half sales, half marketing, then it might not make sense, because it's just an extra tab. It's extra complexity. Sometimes if you're small enough of an organization, I would say keep it simple. Given this is ParDreamin, I'm assuming most people here are using Pardot, so chances are there is a person dedicated to marketing or inside sales. So in that case, you may meet the criteria. But the second piece, the second question that I ask companies to see whether it makes sense for them to use leads or not is, are you dealing with pre-qualified data? So we go back to the trade show example, and we talk about, this massive Excel file that could include everything between prospects and students seeking internships and people who wanted free pens. So you're going through that list and you want to qualify it, throw it in Salesforce and qualify it there. But some companies say, look, it's easier for me to just take them out. We write notes on the Excel. We can filter them out before we load them in Salesforce. If you're filtering them out, then it doesn't make sense to load it in leads, because you've done the job of leads. The downside of that, I understand that it's faster, but the downside is that you cannot have that funnel view of, we went to this trade show, we scanned 4,000 badges, 200 were good, we generated 20 opportunities, we closed 5. You lose that top piece of the funnel, right, by not being able to report on it if you do it outside of Salesforce. But if you are doing that pre-qualification, then it doesn't make sense to import it into leads. Just import it straight as prospect accounts. Same thing with dealerships. Dealerships have a list. If anyone here is leasing a car right now, there's a list with your name on it that says when your lease is going to be up. And that is as pre-qualified as it gets, because you have a contract that's probably about to end in 90 days. You've already purchased from that manufacturer before. The dealers are aware of that. So you've at least probably qualified for the credit to be able to lease a car. And you're going to have the need of getting a new car. I mean, it's like the perfect combination. And lists like that would just go straight into prospect accounts, right? If they leased it from a different dealer and it's your first time trying to convert this to your dealer, this person to your dealer. So just some examples of who should use it. But with the little time I have left, I'm going to go through the questions. I'm just going to talk about the simple trick that I have. I have relied heavily on LinkedIn company data to be able to run marketing qualified leads. So I have yet to find a better source, paid or unpaid. There's the Discover orgs, there's all of these guys out there. If you haven't yet implemented marketing qualified leads, or if it just became too confusing and you guys were lost on all of these items, on like how to score, how to categorize, I have used LinkedIn data with a great amount of success because almost every company has a LinkedIn company page. This is B2B at this point for everyone that's listening, but you can tap into your industries, you can tap into your cities, your states, the number of employees, and you can also use Account Source to be able to score your leads, right, in Salesforce. You can also transfer this data, all of the Account Source, employees, LinkedIn industry, city, state. You can transfer this information over to Pardot, right? You can map those fields and help that on your Pardot grade. So you can all bring that together. This particular screenshot wasn't a Pardot org, but you can capture that information and it's normalized because everyone's going to have to enter the same drop-down fields. So it's great for reporting and accurate scoring. And it's very, very simple to put those fields together and get started. So Jenna, you're asking a question, why would sales not use leads when they're prospecting themselves at times? I mentioned a second ago, it's a level of complexity. If you want to try to teach sales to say, hey, when you're prospecting, use leads. When you're selling, convert them and use opportunities. That's just an extra step of complexity. In my experience in implementations, it's easier to avoid leads on that side. And for people that are using Pardot, then there are functionalities that you can talk to your account executive. Actually, here are the takeaways that you can talk to your Pardot support to enable sync directly to contacts if you choose to skip leads altogether. But a couple of takeaways, because I do want to dedicate some time to questions because I see a lot of them coming in. Remember, guys, leads in Salesforce is supposed to be a bucket of unknowns, right? It's where you put data in to qualify it. Leads is best suited for marketing and inside sales. Sales should not be using leads. Consider leads if you have at least one person dedicated to marketing or inside sales. And then if you're skipping leads, again, contact the Pardot support. And then again, if you're going to try to implement MQL, like marketing qualified leads, and you're not using today, then I highly suggest LinkedIn as a source. So with that said, guys, I appreciate you guys sticking through with the technical difficulties. I am going to try to look at some questions here. So, so many. All right, so let's see a couple of questions. We're good now, we're good. It isn't your fault, So is a prospect before someone converts to a lead or after converted to a lead? So Christina, that's actually a great question. I will bring it back to the slide. So a prospect is there in Pardot when someone is a lead and afterwards. So the idea is that once you convert, there's still a prospect in Pardot. From a business process standpoint, it's whether it's a qualified prospect or not. If it's a qualified prospect, then it should be already into a prospect account, where types equals prospect. Just curious, how do all other attendees? Okay, Jamie, you asked the question. Okay, Teresa, what if you want to track lead source but aren't using leads? Fantastic question. There is a field called Account Source, and that is tied to lead source in Salesforce. So Teresa, look for Account Source. The field is there, and you can map that over very easily over to Pardot as well. So a couple of comments. How do you best report on leads associated with Pardot campaigns when the contact already exists in Salesforce? No leads will be created if contact exists already, and hence you miss out on the reporting effectiveness on the campaigns. William, I'm not sure I fully follow your question right off the bat. If you want to connect afterwards, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to dedicate some time just in the essence of time. Or if William, if you want to put in some more details, then I'll keep answering the questions and we can come back to this. Jenna, why would sales not use leads when they're prospecting themselves at times? We answered that a little bit. If anyone has any more questions, again, it is my recommendation that keeping it simple is the better strategy. If sales is prospecting, hopefully they're prospecting to people that are worth their time. Hopefully they're doing the qualification of researching that person on LinkedIn or whatever the information is to know if it's worth their time. And if they're doing that, then I make the argument that it is a qualified prospect because they're in the company that they want to pursue, whatever the case may be. There's no need to put in leads because it's not unknown. You're already working that. And you're saving them from having to decide whether to put things on leads or on accounts and contacts. So those are my 2 cents that I hadn't mentioned earlier. So Tyler, the LinkedIn data stuff is great. Where we want to start getting data. I do want to put an unmanaged package together. I don't have it. The drop downs are actually fairly straightforward. If you go to a LinkedIn company page, you could actually get those fairly easily. But entering the data, we've seen several customers use things like LinkedIn Sales Navigator or virtual assistants to try to pull in that information, where they'll just put a simple process where a virtual assistant will go through all of the accounts in Salesforce and just search them in LinkedIn and be able to bring that information back. So there's a lot that can be done there. Kristen, this actually goes with your point. So, and to extend on that, so Kristen, thanks for the question. One of the things, if we're going to go on the virtual assistants, we've used G-Connector for Salesforce, which is a free tool, which is an extremely awesome tool where you can put reports in Salesforce and export them to Google Sheets. And then we've worked with our customers so the virtual assistants don't need to go into Salesforce. They can start qualifying these accounts directly from Google Sheets. And you drop your account ID in one of the columns, and they fill out, protect those columns so they don't edit those. And then they just fill out the remaining columns. And once they're all done, you can just load that information with a data loader or just like mass update it with a data loader since you have that data there. Couple of different comments. So Lauren Eubanks, how do you suggest automapping inbound leads to contacts accounts if the lead works at an existing account? So that's a great question. Lauren, I'm going with the assumption, given this is ParDreamin, that you're doing this from a Pardot form. So I would contact your support and have them enable the ability to automatically create contacts. If you're skipping leads, if you're choosing to skip the leads object because you have information and it's pre-qualified, then you can ask Pardot support to enable to create a contact instead of a lead, so you don't have to worry about that conversion. If it's a toss-up, if it's a mix-up, you could come up with some triggers in Salesforce to auto-convert leads. There's a couple, but that is a whole different can of worms that I'm not sure we can open here. But if you're interested, please do follow up with me. I'm happy to talk about that because there are certainly solutions for that. So thank you, Lauren, for the question. Sam, you recommend Salesforce for Pardot. I agree, completely agree with that. Angela, to follow up on Michael's question, which one was Michael's question? I'm like flying through these, but let me see here. A lead will not be created if the prospect is an existing contact in Salesforce. Angela, okay. Yes, that was an answer more than a question. I thought that was the second question. Yes, I agree with Angela Pender there. Can we revisit this presentation after it's finished? One, focus on the ground shaking revelations. That is a question for the ParDreamin guys, but I'm happy to talk about this or do a YouTube live session if there's any questions. Burak, you made a comment there. Craig, I appreciate the comments. I appreciate everyone's comments, actually. Thank you so much. Thank you for sticking with us with this crazy slowdown. And there's a Q&A here. Rana, there we go. Wait, I lost it. Oh, can we use Pardot prospects for nurtures and qualifying versus leads in Salesforce? The answer is yes, you can certainly do that. So the idea would be that, again, once the fields are mapped, you can just work the updates, right? You update everything directly in Pardot if you choose to do so. The idea is that you just need to understand that if you cannot convert a lead from Pardot, so someone needs to do that conversion. If you're managing Pardot and if you're managing the Pardot and you're managing the Salesforce leads object, you're gonna have to do that. Again, there could be some code or some things that you can do that. But guys, I really appreciate everyone's comments. I mean, I'm not sure how we're doing on time. I'm not sure if you're still here, but guys, I will stop sharing my screen. I really appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate everyone from sticking around and listening in. Again, feel free to check out the YouTube session or the YouTube channel that I have. I also have another one if any Formula One fans are here, where I'm using Einstein Analytics to predict race outcomes. So, you know, but again, I appreciate it. I hope this was insightful, and I'll stick around for anyone that has any questions or final comments, and we can tackle it on from there. But final piece, actually, I guess the poll's still there, but it's kind of interesting. You know, half of the people that responded are you know, using leads, but they say that there is some cumbersomeness to it, which matches what I've seen in my 10 years of Salesforce consulting. So I can totally understand, and I appreciate the Sercante team for putting ParDreamin together and helping me out with this issue. I'm not sure what happened here. I still don't see a start broadcast or end broadcast, so I'm not able to end this. I'm just here as almost as much of a passenger as you guys. So, but absolutely. Oh, my YouTube channel is called Salesforce Stories or Salesforce Responsibly. I will post a link on the chat for anyone that's interested. That way you guys can see. Came out with my profile picture in there, but you guys can check that out. There's a couple of videos. I talk a little bit more about the leads as well. There's a lot of best practice chats on different topics. We haven't done one on Pardot yet, but we'll probably have to pull one of the speakers here from ParDreamin and try to get a couple of best practice conversations with regards to Pardot as well. So I think another question came in. Two questions. What is your advice when to sync a lead to Salesforce, Brandy? So yeah, that's a good question. Show us your contact info. Be like, oh, here's my, you know, like, I posted it below. You can search my name, Eric, but I'll talk that one later. But Brandy, you asked about what is my advice on when to sync leads to Salesforce. So I think that is up for a little bit of a discussion. There could be probably a session on that alone, to be quite honest, because it depends on different company situations. I would say that you can always sync a Pardot prospect to a Salesforce lead if you're using the leads object, because again, a lead's a bucket of unknowns, right? We always stick with that principle. So if you want to be able to run Salesforce's reporting engine, which, you know, is much more robust than Pardot's reporting engine, you should sync that information over so you have access to be able to run those reports and try to do better reports for cross-referencing against other Salesforce data that you may have. And then if you have other add-ons besides Pardot to your Salesforce org, if you're talking about Einstein Analytics or a couple of other things, it's certainly much more useful. So I think my general answer for that is the sooner the better, but there are definitely a couple of things to be aware of that may make more sense to hold that back, especially when it comes to conversations about volume of leads. If you're talking about the hundreds of thousands, whatever the situation may be, then you know, sometimes if you deal with a lot of spam leads that come in somehow, it may be better to be selective of when that stuff syncs, so you get an idea, at least some process to correct that or filter that out. So just a couple of points or a couple of thoughts with regards to that. And then Chris, you know, again, I can pull in my LinkedIn profile for anyone that's interested, but I will post that in. Let me see here. All right, I am being told that we have to stop this broadcast now. So it was fantastic for as long as it lasted. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Emma. And I hope you guys enjoyed ParDreamin. Check out the other sessions.